Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the ACE Report video blog series. I'm your host, Nick Lawrence, and I'm here with Dr. Lou Cuthbert from ACE, the Alliance for a Clean Environment. This is our first part in a series of 4 that we're going to be doing about the Limerick nuclear power plant's environmental impact. So Lou, where would we like to start with this first segment?
I think what we'd like to do with this segment, Nick, is give people just kind of an overview and a feel for what a horrific fraud the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has just dumped on this community.
Okay.
In terms of what they claim is a draft environmental impact statement, or an EIS, for the Limerick nuclear plant.
Mm-hmm.
I think the strongest word comes to mind to me when I looked at what's happened here is this is a whitewash of epic proportions. I've never seen a whitewash as broad-based or as just in-your-face as this one. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission should be ashamed of what they came into the greater Pottstown region and did with their public hearing in April of 2013, but they're not. They have no shame. They have no honor. They have no credibility. The whitewash, I think, should become pretty clear as we go through all 4 parts of this video blog report, Nick. I just want to kind of, as a backdrop, talk with you just for a minute about a very recent article that appeared in the Pottstown Mercury. It was July 13th, 2013, written by Evan Brandt. And it reported on a major study that was done that listed a number of economic and financial risk factors for nuclear plants, including Limerick. Limerick, obviously was one of the older plants. And this article made it pretty clear that this industry is in trouble. They're in serious trouble economically for a whole lot of reasons. And I think we'll probably dive into that topic in a little more depth in a future video blog. But our message to the people who watch this 4-part series, Nick, is even before you think about the economics, which are looking really bad for the nuclear industry in this country. Some people have called it, the end of the Renaissance and the early onset of death for the industry. I'm not so sure what the timeline might look like, but we're saying to the community with this series that for environmental impact reasons alone, which are much more urgent, which are much more timely, which are doing damage every moment that we sit here doing this blog, and everyone within the greater Philadelphia region sits anywhere or goes about their daily life. The damage is ongoing. Every single minute that Limerick nuclear plant operates, Nick, it's harming the environment and it's harming people.
Well, I was just going to say that, Lou. With the environment, people can relate to that to a degree, but when you take the environment and you pollute it with the radiation and the things we're going to be talking about, it does have an effect on our health. I mean, that's the thing that people need to really be concerned about. Environment, we have to live within an environment, but as the effect of the environment on us is a big thing. So, I was thinking about this as you were talking. How can they just deny the threats? How does the NRC just deny these things that we know are true from studies and research that's been done? How do they just deny that and continue to go on with the plant the way it is?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, or perhaps the $64 million question, if you take a look at Exelon's corporate interests here. It's pretty clear that the NRC has no intention of being confused by the facts. As a matter of fact, they even refuse to look at facts, including some of their own documents. Right. I mean, this is just such an in-your-face, flat-out lie that it eclipses anything that I've ever seen all the years I've been doing environmental work, Nick. They had the hubris, which is a term that I used in my testimony at that hearing, to come into this community and present what they called a draft environmental impact statement. And they totally ignored all of the environmental impacts. I mean, there's no there.
Right.
So that's, just disingenuous. I think we know why. I mean, the mission of the NRC is to try to protect the environment and to try to protect public health and safety, they've obviously fallen down. I mean, this is worse than guys standing on shovels at job sites. These people can't even stand up. They have fallen down
Right.
face first and failed to meet their mission. What they're doing, I think, pretty clearly is protecting Exelon's profits, and they're protecting their own jobs. A lot of people out there don't know this, but if a nuclear plant closes, that means that some people at the NRC are going to lose jobs, and they're going to lose revenue as an industry. So promoting, some of the ongoing harms and damage, especially to the environment and to the people, is not a problem for them, because they see that as self-enhancing their viability. It's going to maintain their jobs, and it's going to continue some funding streams that go to the Nuclear
So
Regulatory
are they
Commission.
totally denying any harms, or are they reducing the harms to such a minimal level that they say it doesn't impact us in any way?
As someone has said on a couple of previous occasions, teeny weeny little offense is the way they're characterizing this. They have actually had the audacity to say that operating a nuclear plant at the Limerick site does such little damage that any harms are small. They said in this environmental impact statement that essentially all the harms are small, with a couple of very minor exceptions that they called moderate, that had nothing to do with the obvious major harms. So for them to face the community has to be a painful event, because they know that they are just flat out lying.
So what do you call the things they call the standards of significance? What does that actually mean? And then who does the monitoring of these things? So is NRC actually doing the monitoring of the plant? Do they leave that up to Exelon themselves to monitor their own situation, or what? How does that work?
Well, I think we've seen this before in some previous areas of the environment. It's called the Fox is in charge of the hen house.
Okay.
And, the Fox has some pretty regular feasts. There are, a lot of chicken meals being served to the NRC. They're basically boiling down harms to try to claim that they're so small as to be insignificant or not a concern or not a problem, and that's what they tell the public. So the NRC basically has been carrying the water of the nuclear industry, and they basically take Exelon's word for everything, Nick. They do zero monitoring of their own. Exelon does all of the monitoring, all of the testing, all of the evaluation, all of the reporting. NRC is basically just carrying their message and putting a stamp on it.
So when it's called the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, right? Isn't that what that's called?
Yes.
What are they regulating? If they're allowing companies to do their own monitoring, what are they actually regulating?
I think the survival of the industry is what they're regulating.
Okay.
I mean, this is part and parcel, one step in the process of relicensing Limerick Nuclear Plant. And this is an agency that has a gigantic rubber stamp. We've talked about that in some previous blogs and TV programs that we've done. So they're basically just using this checklist mentality, checking it off, getting ready to approve this EIS as one step in the process toward relicensing.
It's my understanding, and we've talked about this before, we've talked about solar energy and wind power in the United States and how important that is. And I think part of the report that I had seen that you had given me was the idea that the NRC doesn't think that the harms to the environment by a nuclear power plant are actually any greater than wind and solar. I mean, it's such an absurd statement. I'm a layperson, I think that's absurd.
Yeah. I was out of my chair when I read that. I mean, literally, it lifted me right off the chair that I was sitting on when I read that. They actually had the audacity to put in writing and claim that running the Limerick nuclear plant on a day-to-day basis, knowing all the stuff that they put into the air and the water and the soil and our children and our bodies and the animals and the fish, is no more harmful than operating a solar facility.
How can it be?
Well, bingo, you got it, Nick. The answer is it can't be.
What does solar radiate into the air? What does it do? It's you know what I mean. There's no even anybody with half a brain would say that doesn't make any sense at all. And yet they make these pronouncements as if we have to accept them as if they're gospel.
Well, they make the statement because they can get away with it, and part of what we're going to do in this this series, this blog series, is we're going to make it clear that this is an agency that has no shame, no morals, no scruples, no credibility, and virtually no scientific expertise. They are not to be believed. They are not to be accepted. They are not to be respected by the people. We need to go to the Congress, which ACE has done, and demand an investigation. We've used the term regulatory malpractice. I don't know that anybody else has used that term previously. These guys may be the poster child for, the gold medal winner of regulatory malpractice. And that's saying something in the United States, Nick. When you think about what's happened over the last 10 years in this country, these guys are the worst of the worst.
I don't know how much more we can say about that other than that. I mean, obviously that's true, but I think when I saw that statement about them saying that wind power and solar power, that nuclear energy is not any worse than those. I mean, it's just hard for me to understand how that goes.
Well, it's reckless. I mean,
Yeah.
in a criminal setting, it would be called reckless endangerment. These guys really don't care at the NRC.
And you have submitted documentation about what we're talking about here. How have they responded to that, or have they responded to it?
Largely, they've chosen to ignore it. I mean, it took quite a while to get them to even acknowledge that we sent it. The original document was about 1,000 pages. The most recent one was about 90 pages.
Mm-hmm.
We've been in their face pretty aggressively. We've also requested a congressional investigation. So we have written to Senator Casey and Congressman Gerlach and Senator Toomey saying, hey, this is a travesty. This is a disaster waiting to happen. You need to convene a congressional investigation. But Congress is a little busy right now. Some would say perhaps not as busy as they'd like to be or should
Right,
be.
exactly. They're busy doing nothing.
Yeah.
That's why we need to get them on board with this stuff, really.
This series, Nick, I'm hoping will open some eyes for people. I mean, this is kind of the overview, the backdrop. Here's this gigantic whitewash, that would have startled Tom Sawyer probably, standing by his picket fence.
Right.
Parts 2, 3, and 4 are going to get into some specifics. Part 2 is going to deal with, the water, just unbelievable threats and harms to the water that NRC has ignored. Part 3 is going to deal with a similar disaster in terms of air pollution at Limerick nuclear plant that NRC has ignored. And then the fourth piece is probably the worst of all, and that's radiation releases and cancer. And the NRC's ignored all of that. So basically what we've done is we've prepared this series to say to people, okay, now it's time to wake up, stand up, speak up, and demand that elected officials protect us, all of us, protect our air, protect our water, protect our children, protect all the animals, the environment, the soil, etc. So there are 4 things that people can do, Nick, and we're going to hopefully reiterate this throughout this series. First thing that people can do is go to the ACE website, www.acereport.org. A lot of information, examples of testimony, background information, a predecessor video blog series. Second thing is talk to other people, inform people. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your relatives, talk to your coworkers. The more people who understand this, the greater the chance that we're likely to get some help. Contact elected officials. If you sit there and do nothing, NRC is going to continue to lie through their teeth and keep painting away with that gigantic brush using the whitewash. So we need to contact elected officials and ask them to reject Limerick's draft environmental impact statement. Supposedly they're going to take whatever feedback they get and improve that. I don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to do that.
That impact statement, though, is that designed toward the relicensing of the plant, or is that just something you have to do as a standard practice? Is that all about relicensing the plant?
Well, the answer is both. I mean, they need to do it. I talked about a checklist mentality on some occasions. This is one item that they have to check off the list.
Okay.
And they're doing this knowing full well that they're lying through their teeth here, and that this will allow them, when they can, to rubber stamp the relicensing for Limerick. So contact elected officials, ask them to reject this draft EIS, and call for closing. We've said we need to call for closing this plant right now. I mean, what we've learned in the last several years is this place is so dangerous and such a threat, and such a verified, documented threat already, that we need to close it now. We're not sure that there's going to be enough water to get us through 2029, much less 2049.
I know we have a lot to talk about in the upcoming series here, so we just have about 30 seconds left in this series, folks. I mean, this first part, so continue to listen and watch, and we have plenty of information coming up with Dr. Lou Cuthbert and myself, and this EIS, the Environmental Impact Study. and what the NRC has done to kind of just push it, sweep it under the rug, if you want to call it that, and not deal with the real issue. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back with our second part of this series, so please continue to watch.